And call forward also Mike and Susanna, because there is the opportunity again just before the break to ask questions. Here is Johanna. There's Jip somewhere. Please raise your hand if you have a question. And hopefully it's going to be shown somewhere else as it's sold out now. So this is.
Anyone got lots of money in the audience?
If you have lots of money and you want to buy an experience that's like really cool, then please do so. But there are some in a way like similarities when it comes to experiences and technology and like giving it like a theatrical context or something. There is something I see happening here in a way in your work. But did you actually went into the dark?
No,
we don't have tickets either.
Yeah, and we can't get a ticket, so thanks for that.
Because it's so
This is like a comparison I can't talk about, so anyway.
But is there any questions from the audience? Yes, totally in the back. Woohoo! Johanna is running up to you.
Yes, really bright.
Yeah, could we dim the light a little bit so we can also see the audience, please?
Hello, Caroline over here. I really like
Carolina Hummels from the TU in Eindhoven.
Of course.
Yes, it's a professor. Okay, you behave. Yeah.
I went to your exhibition, Door into the Dark, and I
you've
really
been?
loved it. We were one of the first visitors even. The thing was, what I want to ask you is, I'm extremely happy with your explanation, because I was actually in, and I really gave into the experience. I let go of the rope, and I thought, just go for it. But then I had these nice guides who brought me every time back, whereas I want to get lost. So how do you actually make the choice in really letting people go and experience and just go? I was actually out really quickly because I'm not an auditive person, so I didn't listen to your guides. I just felt, experienced, just went for it. And I was out within 25 minutes because suddenly, boom, someone said this was the end. So how do you make the decisions actually that you have different types and you sometimes step in or you just let people wander off and get lost?
Did you come on the first day?
Yeah.
You know, I was there actually. I think I remember.
I think I touched you.
So really it's a production question, because if we could allow, if it was only one person every hour, you could just wander around to your heart's content. But sadly, no gallery or festival in the world, I think, would commission a piece of work that was one person every hour. And it was always really important to us that it was for one person at a time, that this was a place for you and you alone. And the thought of you bumping into another participant in there for a start, it would be terrifying. But it would be dangerous, and no. So
did your behavior change during the days? So did your behavior change from the first day to the other days after seeing people interact?
Well, this is we've done it 3 times before. So the first time that we built it, yes, definitely. Because what would happen is that I would watch people going around, and when they didn't do exactly as I was expecting them to do, I'd be like, oh no, they're breaking it, or they're doing it wrong. And like slowly I realized that I was just an outrageously controlling person, and I should let people like have a nice time in the dark. But really what I also came to realize was that touching people is pretty fine. And it's all about the way that you do it and the way that you set it up. And if we could let people wander around in there for ages, I would do it, definitely. But money and time, money doesn't allow for that, basically.
But thanks anyhow. It was a really, really great experience.
Thanks.
Compliments.
Thanks for rubbing it in for the rest of the audience, Caroline.
I can give you the audio if you want to listen to it separately.
And also, in your perspective, what are the steps that's going to be taking? In your case, it's also funny because it's very scientific in a way, and then also moving also in a world of science, and then doing things that are putting it in a different perspective.
I think if I pick up on the question that you asked earlier. I guess the main difference is that in the Rhythm of Life installation, the experience is a bit controlled, particularly the first time we showed it, because it was very much about this personal interaction with the equipment.
Yeah.
And we were very concerned with the ethical implications of actually interacting with this equipment, listening to it, but in the process of listening to your own emissions, also you were handing over some personal information to
Now we know that Mike
scientific
is
research.
unbalanced, for instance.
Yeah. But in this case, in Stripe, I suppose that changes a little, because now that interaction or those originally recorded emissions are being played back publicly for the first time. But there's still almost like this tension there where you approach the equipment to play these rhythms back, and you're playing back somebody's data. It's ambiguous because, you know, I guess that's sort of what we're playing on. How do we make sense of that playback? But in that sense, it's still somewhat of a controlled setup, let's say. Yeah.
And what are the
and
reactions so far?
I think it varies. I think there's people who are really surprised that, I mean, of course, they're answering a sort of pared down questionnaire at the beginning. So there's a lot of people surprised by how accurate it seems to sort of guess other things about them. But then, of course, there's other things that just seem completely off the mark. So it's kind of interesting. You sort of witness certain people trying to do it multiple times because they're sort of baffled by what's going on. And but yeah, I guess it's more like the anomalies in the behavior, a bit like you were saying. Like, I think somehow that becomes more interesting, actually. And I mean, the way it's imagined, I think I mentioned it before, is that it's really, we think of the project as like one long project with multiple little experiments in it. So I can completely imagine a different type of configuration next time round. I mean, it's already quite interesting this time that because it's more public, one person goes to the machine. There's still that one-on-one interaction to make it start, but then you're performing that publicly. So there's almost like a moment of embarrassment, I guess, when it starts to reveal these things. So I think we're kind of interested in the tension of this. But it could be that in future we get rid of that and bring the scientific equipment back. That's a bit of a... Yeah.
Because you can do some stuff with the data, but also like with the whole idea, a lot of people don't even know they actually emit this kind of photonics, biophotonic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people didn't even know in the first place.
I think it's funny because actually a number of people have come up to us and said, yeah, could you explain it? We're really interested to know more. And then you sort of give them this 5-minute monologue, and then they say, oh, if I got this right, people emit light, as if that's the first thing. So I mean, that's already quite an epiphany for most people. I mean, I must admit personally, I'm the sort of person that's quite cynical. So I you know, when I first was told that, I was like, oh, come on, that's bullshit, you know. But then we had the opportunity to like really engage with the equipment ourselves and try it out, and then you really start to understand that there's something really quite profound going on there. But it's really hard to make sense of it. So in a way, this is an attempt to start to do so. Yeah.
And even you as a cynical person, you're emitting it as well.
Yeah.
Although a bit unbalanced, but emitting cynicism. Is there any more questions from the audience? No, well, of course, there is one question over here.
This is for Thought Collider. What are some other ideas for iterations with this project? Even new technologies or interactions between the data that's collected?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discussions with the team about could you potentially hook up 2 people on the device? What happens when you're actively listening to your own emissions over a prolonged period of time? This is playing on the premise that, you know, we're not just listening to sound through the ears, but you're essentially reabsorbing this through the whole body. So could that actually lead to thinking about these biofeedback processes and what that might do in terms of self-regulatory systems? There's a lot of different iterations. Could you expose could you use different triggers? We're talking about smells, other sounds, things that might help you understand that feedback process in from a different lens. I guess a lot of the work is somewhat limited, but also enhanced by the access or lack of access to the scientific equipment, which on the one hand becomes really interesting because then it becomes more about this audible experience and the abstractness of that sensory experience. But on the other hand, we're also really triggered by all the different iterations that we could do if we had a bit more time with the
I think I would add that. I think
Yeah.
synchronicity is a word that comes up a lot. Like, I mean, we know from other projects that there's typically couples tend to synchronize at certain moments. So one hypothesis is that if you had two sets of equipment, could you spot over 5 minutes of time whether the two start to synchronize? I mean, it's already difficult enough from left to right hand between people, but that might be something interesting to test. But yeah, that's an expensive little project, so I'm not sure how realistic that is as a next step. But yeah, that's something we've kind of been discussing.
But also spatially, for example, I mean, if we're, if I'm the person being measured, but there's an audience around me, is it really me that's the object of study, or my reaction to, the effect that other people are having on my system, my body? So, yeah, so the whole idea, I guess that links to healing environments.
Different when I stand next to you. Yes?
Yeah, I get nervous. It's all
Oh, sorry. Then I go, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea of feedback between bodies, but also spaces and substances, molecules.
Yeah, there's
all
a
these
term
things,
within the team. I guess it's also kind of common within healthcare, where they're talking about optimal healing environments. So there's a much more switched on notion of how the environment is feeding us, but how we're feeding the environment, and this starts to tap into that. Although, I mean, at this point, it's clear that we're only scratching the surface of that. Yeah. So that would be a kind of logical next step in it. Yeah.
And I
Scratching
suppose
the
we're
surface.
also interested in the history of it. The fact that it's linked to things like parapsychology, which is seen as a pseudoscience in some contexts, we find quite fascinating. Kirlian photography, these different experiments that happened along the way that, then led to, the definition of biophotons today. But, as from an art design perspective, we're quite interested in experimenting with that, and tracing back those steps. Yeah.
If you have any more questions, please go to Amy or to Mike or to Susanna. And well, in your case, hopefully it's going to be soon in the future. Other people haven't got a ticket to see it. And in your case, it's really near between the bar and the virtual tree. Just go upstairs. It's really easy. So for now, thank you so much, Mike and Susanna and Amy. Thank you.